Okay, in lesson 3, our assignment is going to be to create a hybrid animal. We are going to select pieces of or parts of one animal and apply it to the other animal. Okay? Last lesson we learned about our selection tools, specifically the selection tool and the quick selection tools right here. And we moved them into, we used the boats in the bay example and moved boats into a bay. Now we're going to use animals and create a hybrid animal, but instead of just moving them into another animal, what we're going to do is we're going to feather the selected area first. And what feathering does is it makes makes the edges kind of blurry, and so it blends it in a little bit better. To show you what I'm talking about, and you don't have to do this, I'm just showing you as an example. If I selected, and this is a very quick selection, I know it's not great, but just for the example of feathering, if I selected, let's say, the donkey's head, and I just use the move tool like we did with the boats in the bay project in lesson 2, if I just drag that in there, take a look. Let me make it a little bit smaller. And then, so that's what we did last time. That's kind of like cutting out a picture in a magazine with scissors. There's a sharp edge right here. If I feather it, which all you have to do is, if you're on a selection tool, you right click and go to feather, and it asks you for how many pixels, and this is basically how fuzzy the edge of your selection is going to be. So if I put, let's say, 15, and so the more pixels, the fuzzier it's going to be. If I feather at 15 pixels and hit OK, and you're like, well, I didn't really see much of a difference. When I click on my move tool and move it in, let's kind of compare and contrast the difference between feathering and not feathering. So you can see there's the same two, and you can see the image, the outline is a little bit fuzzy, and this kind of blends it in a little bit better. So what we're going to do today is we are going to feather the animal parts and create a hybrid animal. Okay? So I'm going to you don't have to pay attention to this one. I'm going to close that picture. That was just to show you an example. Just to get you guys started, I am going to select the donkey's head. And remember, you can use whatever selection tool you like. And you can also zoom in. I'd recommend zooming in so that you have a clearer picture of what you're selecting. And I'm just going to use the paint or the selection brush and select the head. And anything outside of the head, remember you can hit Alt, and Alt will shave off any selected areas that you don't want. And you can also change the size of the brush tool as well. So once I've selected this, I'm going to right click, and you have to be in a selection tool. I'm going to right click, feather, and let's say I'll do maybe 10, and hit OK. And remember, the more pixels you select, the fuzzier it's going to be. You might realize that you've feathered it too much and you want to go down a little bit, or vice versa. And then use the move tool, and I'm going to move it down to the donkey. And now you can reposition it. You can use your bounding boxes to skew it a little bit. You can even flip it, right? That's going to come in handy when you're doing the legs. And you can also rotate it too by putting your cursor just outside the bounding box. Right? So reposition it. You're going to hit OK, and then with our idea of non-destructive editing, we want to be aware of our layers, and let's be organized as well. So let's right click and go to rename, and I'm going to just label this sheephead, and I'm going to hit OK. Now, after I have selected it and repositioned it, and you can see that it's kind of a fuzzy edge, blends in well. I'm going to click on the panda, and I'm going to click Z or the zoom tool, and I'm going to zoom into one of the eyes. You can see if you see the pixels, people call that pixelation. That just means it's a small file, but we're only going to be doing the eyes, and the eyes are going to be small. So I'm going to select that, and it's going to be it's so small, I probably wouldn't even, maybe we can feather it maybe 1 pixel. Right click, feather, let's do maybe 1 and hit OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the move tool, and I'm going to move it into my picture, and I am going to rename that layer Panda Eye. And now I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to move the Panda Eye. Move the Panda Eye up, and I'm going to rotate it whichever direction you want, and hit OK. Now, one thing that I want to show you with the layer palette is when creating this hybrid animal, sometimes your layers get mixed up. Take a look what happens if I move this panda eye down in the middle. It goes away, right? You didn't delete it, you just can't see it because the sheep head is above it. So when you're thinking about the layer palette, think of a stack of papers. Whatever piece of paper is on top is going to show, right? So these checkered box means the checkered background means that's transparent. But if as you can see, the sheep head is in front of the panda eye. So what you might have to do with some of your layers is make sure the ones that you want to see are on top. So you can tell that the panda eye, now when I drag the panda eye layer on top, it is in front of the sheep head, which we want. Okay? So now go ahead and give that a shot. Try creating a hybrid animal. And when you are done, I want you to save it as a Photoshop file. File, save as, you can just hit OK. And then I want you to save it as a Photoshop file because that preserves our layers, right? If you save it as a JPEG, it's going to flatten all the layers, which we do not want. Okay? Oh, and one more thing. So for this assignment, instead of just doing two animals, go ahead and try to make a hybrid animal with 5 different animals, or let's say 6 different animals. So you're going to have a background layer, and then you're going to have 5 additional layers, and each layer should be labeled whatever part they are, whether it's giraffe's leg or a lizard's tail or what have you. Okay? Give that a shot.